What's going on, everybody? This is episode 9 of Interview with Warfighters. And tonight I got my good buddy Les Winner, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, served in Desert Storm. And you might recognize him if you're a regular on my channel. He's regular on the live streams. He also has his own YouTube channel called Pegasus Test. Make sure you guys go check that out after this interview if you haven't already. But a good friend of mine, here he is, Sergeant Les Winner.
Hey, good to see everybody.
You too,
How you
man.
doing, Brent?
Good, bud. Good, bud. All right. Are you ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right. So let me get situated here. All right, man. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to your early days, whether it be elementary, middle school, high school. When was it that made you want to be a United States Marine?
Well, in the early 80s, I had a cousin, and he was the crew chief on Marine One. And his wife was the editorial secretary over at Leatherneck Magazine. So pretty much from 1980 till I joined the Corps in 87, just a healthy dose of Marine Corps propaganda nonstop. So, yeah, I was really excited. By the time I even went to high school, I knew the Corps is what I was going to do. And so joined up in the DEP as soon as I could, went to boot camp at 17. Had the misfortune of turning 18 in boot camp, and word to the wise to all those watching out there, don't let your DIs know it's your birthday. It just doesn't work out.
Well, that just goes for the entirety of your Marine Corps career.
Yeah. So went to Paris Island in the summer of 1987, and turns out my series got to be the lucky one. Is when Commandant Gray had just come into the Commandant's position, he had decided he wanted to revamp everything. So what everybody now knows as Marine Corps training, what you do after boot camp, we actually did in boot camp. So instead of the normal 13 weeks, we were all there 16 weeks. And
Oh, wow.
they were trying out all the different things on us and stuff. And it was pretty ad hoc. And it, from what I've talked to the guys that have gone through MCT since then, it doesn't seem to be anything that we did back then. So obviously Marine Corps has tweaked it a bit going over time. From at the end of boot camp, I made the mistake of when I enlisted of going into a program group called Bravo November, because I had this cool idea that since I was so into photography that, I'll be a photojournalist and I can do anything in the Marine Corps. Well, that was one of the jobs you didn't get guaranteed. You got anything in the group. And I ended up being a logistician. And fast forward to the end of the story, I'm the poster boy in that respect because I went into the Corps, got my career, and now I'm one of the owners of a successful logistics company. So I did get a skill out of it, so I can't complain
Private
about
Winner,
that.
you are not a reporter, you're a killer.
That phrase may have been uttered. And then after boot camp, I went up to Little Creek to go to Embarkation School. And in typical Marine Corps fashion, they had overbooked the school. So they had like 150 students for when they can have a max of 30 in the class. And being the Marine Corps, they went alphabetical and started at A. And for those of you who don't know, W is at the far end of the alphabet. So I got shunted off over to Fort Story to basically be permanent working party over at Amphibious Reconnaissance School. And by being there, I got to do some cool shit. So that was kind of a cool way to waste time. Although I will warn everybody, the Chesapeake Bay in December is quite cold. Yeah, Amtrak's, gotta love them.
Was that at that school?
No, that particular picture is actually during Desert Storm.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
we can get into that a little bit later. And then after Embarkation School, I was actually top grad there, so they let me pick my duty station. And Hawaii seemed really cool, so I picked K-Bay as the duty station to go to, and I ended up there as part of Marine Aircraft Group 24. And when I got out there, Hawaii is a cool duty station. It's a really cool place to be. I always tell everybody that during my enlistment, I had a series of government paid vacations in Hawaii because I actually ended up spending a whole lot more time deployed than actually in Hawaii. So I got there, got assigned to the group headquarters in the embarkation logistics section. And then typical Marine Corps stuff, deployments would come up, start doing exercises like CACs, which everybody calls, I think it's Mojave Viper now, showing my age there. What's that? You're
Yeah, sorry, it's not even called that anymore. That's even an old term. It's called ITX, Integrated Training Exercise.
Oh, damn, I am getting old.
Yeah.
We went and did some cool stuff in Korea called Team Spirit, which if you ever want to find out how cold life can be, go to Korea in the wintertime. Not fun, although did some really cool stuff there. Then did exercises in Arizona at the Weapons and Tactics School. Got to go to really cool Air Force exercise out in Nevada called Green Flag. It's part of the Red Flag curriculum, and went out there with the last of the Phantom jets that were in the Marine Corps, which was really, really cool. And being Marines, we did awesome, kicked Air Force ass, which is always a good thing. And went on a 6-month deployment on the USS Bellewood, where we basically spent a lot of time in the Pacific, mostly around the Philippines, because in the late 80s, the Philippines was just politically unstable as it could be. So,
Hey, Les, can you
yeah.
explain what the USS Bellewood is and like what kind of ship it is?
Oh, yeah, sure. Unfortunately, now she's a setter of reefs on the bottom of the ocean, but at the time, she was an amphibious assault ship. The current analog would be one of the Wasp-class LHDs. These predecessor. Bellewood was about the size of a World War II aircraft carrier, and on board she had a battalion of Marines reinforced with a plussed-up helicopter squadron that was mainly composed of CH-46s, CH-53s, Cobras, and Hueys, and a Harrier detachment. And she would have 2 other ships with her in the deployment as part of the Ready Group. And we cruised around basically the Philippine areas of the South Pacific. We went to Thailand. We cruised up to Okinawa, down to an island called Tuvalu, which is a little speck of dust in the middle of the Pacific. But the majority of that deployment was around the Philippines. Classic ship right there. Awesome ship.
Yeah,
Great
that's the
ship to be
Bellewood.
on. Yep.
According to Google, anyways.
Yeah, they got it right. After that deployment, came back and did a UDP in Okinawa. The squadron I was assigned to, HMH 463, had been sent to reinforce one of the HMMs there to plus it up. And when we come back in August 1990, the day we arrived back in Hawaii, Saddam Hussein decides he wants to make Kuwait his own. And the Marine Corps basically said, hey, you guys are all packed up and ready to go. So a few days later, we're loading up planes and we're on our way to Saudi Arabia. And we were one of the first units to arrive in Al Jubail. Matter of fact, the Saudis had built this runway there, or airport there, and they had never used it. We were the first to break the seals on the doors. All the computers still had plastic around them. It was kind of surreal. And what happened for me personally there, as units would go in, that being technically a personnel that was assigned to the air group and not a squadron, I would deploy with a squadron, get it embarked, get it over there. And when they'd unpacked, I would then be rotated back to Hawaii to bring the next round over. So I was on a rotation through 1990. I'd be gone about 2 weeks, come back for 2 weeks, go over with the next unit. And that cycle continued all the way up until the period between Christmas and New Year's. And then I was permanently attached to HMH 463 over in the desert. And then from there, I stayed with that squadron through the end of the war.
Can you just kind of go back what it was like being in Desert Storm? It doesn't really get covered too much, and you don't hear much from the veterans that were there. Like, what were even some like the downtime and the boredom and stuff? Like, what was it like the days leading up to the actual kickoff of, like the air campaign and whatnot?
Well, the main thing we considered it, we called it Kuwaiting, just sitting in the desert, Kuwaiting. And in the beginning, when I would be over there in like 1990, you had this fear that the invasion was going to kick off any day, that Saddam was not going to stop with Kuwait. He was going to come into Saudi Arabia. And I remember when we first got there in early August 1990, we were very well informed that we were it. The only thing in front of us was a brigade of the Saudi National Guard, the remnants of the Kuwaiti Army, and 3rd Marines. But all the heavy equipment was still on the water on the MPF ships. There was no artillery, there was no tanks, no Amtraks, nothing except us, the Marines with rifles. So that was pretty daunting. When I rotated back to K-Bay and came back over with the next unit, okay, nothing's happened. A few weeks have gone by. The MPF ships have showed up. The artillery's been offloaded. The tanks are out there. And you had a lot more confidence of like, okay, Saddam's going to get stupid. We're ready for him. And so what we started doing then is, started picking out where FARP sites were going to be, where we were going to deploy to for other operations and all that. And that's basically how 1990 consisted of, I'd go over with a unit, come back, go over with a unit. When I got there in beginning of January 1991 and I was permanently staying, the air was definitely different in the fact that, the Army had been sending over an entire armored corps. The president was talking about having forces to eject Saddam from Kuwait. So we had gone from a defensive mindset to an offensive one. And we had started to train much more heavily in our day-to-day operations. You were always preparing for when the word came. And it was like the world's most telegraphed punch in a way, because you knew when the air war was going to start because they announced it. You knew the deadline for when the ground war would start because it was announced and everything. And as those dates grew closer, things started to get more ominous. The first ones were, the Scud Alerts. As soon as the air war started, Saddam started launching Scuds, and they were a big unknown. So there was some fear. We were told they had chemical weapons warheads. And so anytime an air raid siren went off, you had to get into MOP 4, which after a while, that just really sucked. As you all know, being in MOP 4 just on a peacetime training exercise sucks. When it's got the potential to be real, then it starts to get, really starts to get inside your head. And we knew it was getting real because not only do we have our gas masks, not only did they issue us our MOP suits, they also issued us atropine and 2-PAM chloride, which is nerve agent antidote. And they started to have us take what was called NAP, nerve agent protection pills, and gave us the infamous shot A and shot B, which that's literally in my shot record. That's what it says. Shot A classified, shot B classified. So he stuck something in me. I have no idea what it is. I guess it was okay. I don't have 4 heads.
It was the original COVID vaccine. That's what it was.
There you go. That's why when I got COVID, I had no symptoms.
They just took shot A and shot B and renamed it. So talk to me about this picture, man. This looks really interesting.
Yeah, this is an Iraqi 120 millimeter mortar. Day or two after cessation of hostilities, we're just flying over Kuwait, saw this position. We're like, that'll make something cool to put in front of the squadron when we get back. So we literally landed, pulled it into the back of the helo, and took it back to the base we were at a place called Tanajib. And we had to prep it to go back to K-Bay. So that's me taking all the measurements so I could do the load planning on the aircraft to take it back.
Nice. What about, so your squadron, did they fly 53s?
Yeah, HMH 463 at the time was flying CH-53 Deltas. We were the last squadron in the Corps to have those and had not quite switched over to the Echoes yet.
Yeah, it's crazy how many iterations of that particular airframe have been in existence, guys. This bird has been in the Marine Corps' arsenal since Vietnam, at least the
Oh yeah.
variant.
Fun
So
fact: one of the helicopters in the squadron had been flown during the relief of Khe Sanh, and our CO, it was in his logbook that he'd flown that helicopter on the relief missions into Khe Sanh.
is that right? That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
The
so
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying that's how old the things were. And fun fact: later on in 2012, I went back to K-Bay with my daughter in her junior ROTC unit. Went back to my old unit, and they put on a great display for the kids and everything. And they were saying that yeah, the birds had just been replaced 2 years before, and that like all the machine guns, like the XM218s, yeah, they just gotten the new GAU 21s 6 months ago. So the gear was old when I had it, and it was even older than being used.
That's a reoccurring theme too, because when I was a junior Marine, becoming a machine gunner and whatnot. Now we never had M60s, but we had the M240 Golf, which has thus been replaced. And those guns were old. Our staff sergeant, machine gun section leader, said that he had those. So all the internal parts were all worn down and stuff. Now we ended up getting new parts for them, coincidentally, in country from the Army. The Army wasn't privy to this, but they had loaned us some M240 Bravos for some gun trucks that we got from them. And then when we returned those M240 Bravos, they looked new on the outside, but the inside told a different story.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with the tactical relocation of strategic assets necessary for the accomplishment of your assigned mission. And besides that, if it has an NSN, the commandant wants you to have one.
Right. So what's the story with this picture?
So HMH 463 was assigned to MAG 26 over in the desert, and we were the 13th squadron in a 12 squadron MAG, and we were the only Hawaii Marines in a California MAG. So to say we were red-headed stepchildren would be putting it mildly. And we went and scavenged a lot. And we were out scavenging through a Saudi supply depot, and we found this. And we were just horsing around because, you leave Marines alone for a minute, they'll fuck off and do shit. I have no idea what that is, but we were rolling it around like a hamster wheel.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out here, guys, is for those of you that are really into like Marine Corps or uniform history and stuff, but notice, black boots. There's plenty of pictures of Marines with green jungles on. Like they didn't have, at least the Marine Corps didn't have the desert suede boots like that. That was an Army thing. Like,
yeah. The funny thing about desert suede boots, I still have mine, and they're in great condition because I was issued them the day I left Saudi Arabia.
The exact same thing happened to us. Now we had the desert jungles going into OIF 1, but right before we came home, like we had worn the same uniforms and same boots through the entirety of our first deployment. And I mean, these things are falling apart. I still have them. They're like busted at the seams and everything. We wore them the whole time, and everybody looked at it. Some guys had like duct tape around their boots just to hold the soles in place. But right before we came home, by God, they gave us brand new camis, brand new boots. They gave us all that stuff. So
yeah, that's one thing where I was so lucky being in a helicopter squadron and as being qualified flight crew. I had a set of chocolate chips, but I also had my Zoom bag to wear when I was on flight days. And then halfway through, they issued us the tan flight suits. So ended up having 3 different uniforms I could actually wear. And of course, we still had our greens, but the Marine Corps uniformity, so you never were supposed to wear your greens in the desert. So yeah, I was lucky I had 3 uniforms I could go with, but there were guys who just had the one set of chocolate chips and they had to make do.
yeah.
Laundry days were always interesting.
So is this you had it titled Scud Launch or?
Yeah, one of the times the Scuds launched, and if they were intercepted close to us or they impacted close to us, we stayed in mop gear a lot longer than normal. Usually the alarm would sound, and with about 10 to 15 minutes, you'd get the all clear. and then you just go back to about your business. Every now and then one would either impact close by or get intercepted overhead. And then it would take hours and hours for the all clear to come, because in theory, the Scud could contain a chemical weapon warhead. Talking to all our NBC guy who's actually in that picture, and our S2 guys, they were saying that there was so little that the missile could carry that we were more in danger from a direct hit than we were from getting gassed. But everybody, out of abundance of caution, would they would keep us in mop gear if one landed close by until they were absolutely 1,000% sure no chemicals had been released, which really sucked because there was one day it took them forever to decide. So in comes the Scud. It hits maybe about a click and a half from where we were at, and the all clear didn't come, and it didn't come all night, and it didn't come in the morning. And then about lunchtime, it's like nature's taking its course, and you're like deciding like, okay, they're not letting us out of this stuff, so it must be real, but I really got to use the head.
So what rank were you during the Gulf War?
Corporal.
You were a corporal at the time? Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume you weren't a candidate for selective unmasking?
Actually, the way we did that, the first time they did it that way, where they come in, hey, Marine, hey, can I have your rifle? Take your mask off. I kind of thought that was fucked up. So when the gunny or the captain would walk in the tent and start that speech, I'd just take mine off and stuff, because I thought that was really fucked up to do to a PFC or a Lance Corporal.
For those of you that don't know what selective unmasking is, when you're in an NBC environment and you're given, like, essentially they think it's all clear, right? They have to essentially do a human test first. So typically what happens is you find somebody that's kind of at the lowest end of the totem pole, so probably just Joe Blow rifleman. Hey, PFC, come here. Hey, how you doing? You doing all right? All right. Hey, let me see your rifle real quick. And they hand you their rifle, and it's like, hey, Devil Dog, you've been selected for selective unmasking. Go ahead and take your mask off. So this Marine or soldier, I'm sure the Army does it too, has to take his gas mask off while everybody else still has theirs on. The theory there is, if there's some still lethal agent in the air, that guy will drop dead, and that way everybody else doesn't die. So
yeah, I seriously thought that way of doing it was just fucked up. That's why, like, as soon as Gunny would walk in, I'd just pull mine off. I make the decision for him. Although I will say, we had so many Scud Alerts that the standard to get your mask on was 9 seconds, with an additional 5 seconds to get the hood all secured and zipped up and everything. I could get it all done in less than 8.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. We got real good at that. I know a lot of guys did like I did, where like gas mask became your pillow, because the Scuds always came at night. You never had a 3 in the afternoon Scud attack. It was always like fucking 9 at night, 4 in the morning, whatever shit like that, How
effective were like Patriot missiles at it and intercepting those? Because I've heard kind of like mixed things throughout the years.
Well, some impacted near us, so clearly some didn't get engaged. I never saw an engagement ever. I heard about them on AFARTs, and sometimes, for those of you who don't know, AFARTs, Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, we'd hear it on the radio because we'd always have it playing to get the news. They'd tell us the Patriots engaged. I never saw an engagement. They never said anything on AFARTs when we'd hear a very loud boom sometimes from the impact. But I never saw an engagement. So I really can't gauge how effective they were.
Let's see. I think I got one more photo from Desert Storm. There you go.
Ah, yes. That's actually from Desert Shield, technically. It hadn't changed to Desert Storm. That shows you how close we were to the Iraqis. I was flying in my bird on the Saudi side of the border, and I took that with my personal camera of the Iraqis just over the line.
It looks like he's aimed in at you.
Probably was. Trust me, there was a 50 trained on him too. And for those that are curious, APIT 50 caliber rounds will light up a BMP no problem. Because the Russians, in their infinite wisdom, made the back doors of the BMP also the gas tanks. So you walk up behind one of those and put rounds in it, and it's like a Roman fucking candle.
Yeah, I was when I was doing some training in Poland. I went in the back of one of those, and like, oh my god, there's no way in hell I could have ever served in some Eastern Bloc military, man. You do not fit in the back of those things.
Oh, yeah.
They do not make those for the average American combat Marine or soldier. That's for damn sure.
Oh, hell yeah. Fun fact, in 2019, I was over in Finland at a match there called Finnish Brutality, and they had a BMP as a prop because the Finns use BMPs. And I was there with Rudy Reyes and stuff, and we looked at this thing and go, this is probably the first one of these we've ever seen intact. And on one of the stages, you had to start out inside that BMP. And I will say with complete honesty, I will never, ever complain about an Amtrak ever again. All my complaints from back in history and stuff, no, they're all invalid. Any complaint I had about an Amtrak, I'm full of shit. No.
Yeah. You know what's funny is that same exercise where I got inside one of those BMPs, our Amtrackers were talking to the BMP crewman, the Polish BMP crewman, and I don't remember what the exact conversation was, but it kind of came up like, this armament that we have, which on an AAV you have a Mark 19 and a 50 cal. They're like, oh yeah, our tactics and TTPs and everything are designed to counter these, which you guys are driving.
Yeah, it was always a scary experience going from ship to shore in an Amtrak. I'd never want to do it in a BMP, and technically a BMP can do it, but I don't want to find out ever.
Right. All right, so I guess the war is winding down. What kind of roles did you play? Were you a crew chief?
No, I was just a gunner.
Okay.
I guess some backstory here would be good for the people watching. In the Marine Corps, door gunner is not an MOS like it is in the Air Force. It's a tertiary duty, basically. And to be a door gunner, at least when I was in, it may have changed. You had to get the max on the swim test, so you had to be water survival qualified, and you had to qualify on the XM218 50 caliber machine gun. And once you do that, you could be air crew. And the general thing at the time was they opened it up to people other than the maintenance MOSs if they weren't having enough guys passing swim qual. And just by sheer luck out in K-Bay due to Marine Corps incompetence, somehow my record book says I got through boot camp without going to swim qual, which is absolutely impossible, as we all know. So they sent me to swim qual and I passed. And the instructor is like, okay, you clearly know how to swim. Do you want to try to get to the next level? I'm like, sure, we're here. And we just kept going. And by the end of the day, I had gotten to WSQ. And I was like, well, hey, I can be aircrew now. So yeah, I want to do that because firing machine guns from helicopters is super fucking cool.
Yeah, man, I got the privilege of going up in a Huey one time and shooting one of the mounted 50 cal. I actually have a clip uploaded to my channel if you guys are interested in seeing it. But what I was blown away, so there's no, at least how this was mounted, there was no like aiming apparatus.
Oh, no. You fire belts. You don't fire bursts. You just follow the tracer.
Yep. You just freaking let it roll, baby. And then you watch the tracers and you walk it on from there. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the only time you can just let a machine gun go cyclic and have no worries about, one, getting yelled at, and two, that it's going to harm the gun.
Well, yeah. So it's funny you say that is because when I was up there, and obviously I'm a 331, or at least I was a machine gunner. And so I'm shooting 6 to 8 round bursts, right? Because that's what you do with a machine gun. So it's, die, motherfucker, die, motherfucker, die. So I'm doing this, and the crew chief was over there, is like looking at me. He's like, he keeps doing this. He's like, he's telling me, he's like, let it roll, like hold it down longer. Stop shooting. Stop doing these little putty bursts, right? Because that's what we do on M240s. He's like, no, let that sucker roll, man. Let it go. So.
Oh yeah, that's another cool thing about the helicopter. We have way more ammo than you guys could ever have on the ground. In my gun port when we flew out, I've got a 100-round can mounted to the gun, and there's like 12 more cans stacked right next to me.
And you guys don't do any police calling?
No.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Nice big bag under the gun, catches all the brass, catches all the links. It's awesome.
Did you guys ever get to just offload some 50 into anything, Iraqi trucks or anything during the course of Desert Storm?
Yeah, we came across a few BMPs. Most of our missions when the war was actively on was moving up supplies. As you can imagine, it's what the 53 is good at. We did have one time we were escorted by Cobras because we were going up into a high threat area about the time Task Force Ripper was hitting the Al Jaber airfield. And we were near the Cobras and stuff. That's where we saw the BIMPs and walked 50 cal into the back of a BIMP. It's a Roman candle.
Nice. Awesome. Can you imagine just having that on like GoPro? If only that stuff was around back then.
Oh my God, man. Everything was filmed back then. Like when you asked me for pictures yesterday, it's like I'm pulling out photo albums, throwing them on the photo scanner and everything because nothing's digital anymore. And
Right.
you didn't take a lot of pictures because the roll of film had maybe 24, 36 pictures. To get it developed was a pain in the ass and stuff.
Right.
Like, all the pictures I took over there, and I do have albums full, I would take a roll of film and send it home. I saw none of my pictures till about the summer of 1991.
I completely understand that, man, because when I was in the invasion, I had the disposable cameras, right? And we didn't have digital cameras. I'm sure they were around at the time, but like nobody freaking PFCs, Lance Corporals, young Marines didn't afford that stuff back then. So we all had those little wind up, like click disposable cameras. So I had a few of those with me. And, during invasion, I'd snap some pictures and then I sent those home to my mother, back in the States, and she went to go get them developed. And she told me that when she took them in, she gave them to the person behind the counter to get them developed. I know all you young bucks have no idea what I'm talking about right now. But you used to have to get your pictures developed. So they dropped the camera off. And so my mom told the lady, she's like, look, she's like, my son is over in Iraq and he's in the war. She's like, I don't know what's on these, but please develop them. I'm sure they're very important to him.
I made absolutely sure I sent all my film to my dad because, like, photography is my hobby. I had cameras everywhere, but guys would always grab cameras and do stuff. And I was like, last thing I need is my mom seeing a dick pic.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that that's not on there.
Yeah, the other bad thing to sidetrack from him about being a camera guy, like being into photography, is the air war starts. And at the beginning, this is a thing for the guys in the starch wings, the F-18s, the Harriers, they're doing their thing. And in the helicopters, we end up actually helping the Army for their big move out to the West, carrying a lot of loads for them. And then one day we're getting ready, and the sergeant major calls me into his office. And he goes, do you enjoy photography? I'm like, well, yes, Sergeant Major, I do. That's why I'm taking pictures of everything. And he's like, war's coming. I want you to go around and make sure you get a picture of everybody before we start losing people. And he's like, don't let anybody know what you're doing. And it's like, now it's getting real.
Private Joker. All right, man. So how was the end of the war? Because I mean, Desert Storm was like wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, that was really weird. Because the start of the ground war, we had deployed pretty far forward, and we were not far from the Kuwaiti border. And we knew when the war was going to start. We'd all got our mission briefing, and we'd done our maintenance. We were kind of having a little downtime before we actually kicked off. And I remember that we were all just coming out of what was the mess tent, looking north. It was raining of all things in the desert, thanks to the oil fires. And then there appears this mushroom cloud. And we thought, oh, fuck, we've been nuked. And it turns out what had happened is the Air Force had dropped this thing called a Daisy Cutter, which is the largest conventional bomb. You don't even drop it from a bomber. You dump it out of the back of a C-130. And it put a literal mushroom cloud on the horizon. And so we were like, holy fuck. Some guys even jumped into their NBC gear. A few of us were like, well, the alarm didn't go off, so I think we're okay, or it may not matter in a few minutes anyways. During the war, we flew missions, and the war being over, we kind of knew, because I remember on the last day when the convoy of death happened. The Iraqis were evacuating, and they had found it. And all of a sudden, the Harriers start landing at our base because we're pretty far north, demanding that basically doing refueling and rearming them. And I remember seeing something that was the ultimate no-go. You do not stand on an ejection seat in an aircraft for obvious reasons. You might take a ride. And I remember seeing pilots standing on their ejection seats, yelling and screaming at ground crew to go faster and stuff, to rearm them and refuel them so they could get up there and get that convoy. And throughout the day, as we got the stories back about this huge convoy of Iraqis trying to escape and what they were doing to it, that's when we kind of knew the war was going to end soon. And sure enough, that evening they announced the war would end the next day at a certain time. I think it was noon the next day. And at that time, yeah, go ahead.
It's important to note, for people that didn't know, like Iraq, the Iraqi army was considered the third largest in the world at the time.
Fourth at the time, yeah.
I mean, that says a lot. I mean, the fourth largest army in the world, and then it's just reduced to just heaps of burnt rubble.
Yeah, I don't know what was left when you were there, Brent, before the invasion, but I remember just anytime we flew over Kuwait, when we could see, because the oil fires were so damn bad. But yeah, there was just equipment everywhere. I mean, giving credit where it's due, the Air Force pounded the shit out of them. And they had pounded them so hard. Funny story, there was this FARP site called Lonesome Dove. And believe it or not, the Marine Corps had run out of sandbags. So they had brought in a bulldozer, and he was just making berms. And we see the bulldozer guy, he pulls up on the berm, jumps out, he's taking a leak, and then we see him pulling up his pants and running down back to his tractor. And he grabs his M16, he runs over the berm, and he comes over 3 Iraqi prisoners.
That's too funny. Hey, I saw a question less about your gear. Somebody's asking about your service rifle. Was it an M16A2?
Yeah, it was. It was then the brand new M16A2.
So can you just take a few moments just to talk not just about your service rifle, but like what kind of gear you guys wore back then?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So in Marine Corps service, the M16 was brand new back then. It's so new that we were told in boot camp, we were one of the first series going through to get it. I don't know how much of that is drill instructor bullshit or actual truth, but I do know my first year out in my fleet and going to my first rifle qual that a lot of guys raised their hands that they'd never shot an A2 before. So the rifles for us were brand new. And another weapon system that was super duper brand new is the M9. So new, in fact, that going to Desert Storm, we traded in our 1911s and got M9s still in the crate, threw them on the plane, and issued them when we got to the desert, and then found out we had no magazines. So yeah, as aircrew or officers, we got issued M9s to go with our M16s if we were enlisted. And other gear that we had, straight Alice gear. So, the standard Y suspenders, GI pistol belt, canteens, first aid kit, which I still use, as you see in One Shepherd. Still using that gear, believe it or not. We had the Pascat system, which was a flak jacket and the Fritz style helmet. I forget when, it was still during Desert Shield, we got issued a desert camouflage over covering for the flak jacket. We were issued chocolate chips with a boonie hat. We eventually, I think it was early 1991, we finally got issued helmet covers for our K-pots. And all the gear we had otherwise was pretty much standard 1980s gear. We did get issued night desert camouflage, which is absolutely useless under Gen 2 or Gen 3. But it was nice and warm because, believe it or not, it gets really fucking cold in the desert.
Yeah, a buddy of mine who's a sergeant major, it was also in Desert Storm. He told me that they used to call that in his squadron a smoking jacket because all the guys would put it on because you can actually button in a liner with it. For those of you who don't know, kind of like an M65, and they would wear that to go out to the smoke pit to burn one.
Yeah, spent many a night out on the perimeter, wrapped up in that thing, because we had to do our own guard duty too over there. So, because Commandant Gray was very adamant that all the Marines who were not grunts had to pull their own security and do all their grunt stuff.
It makes sense. Free up some O3s to go do other stuff. So, all right. So what was redeployment back to the States like?
That is one of my proudest moments, believe it or not, because when it was time to go back, obviously the Marine Corps said, order your arrival, order you go back. So the first units in would be the first units to get to go back. And MAG 26 called all their units in and said that, this was going to be a quick thing. They were going to get everybody back as quickly as they could, and that you had to go get your stuff organized. You had to be ready. There was not going to be time to wait. And I'm so proud of myself asking the simple question of, if somebody's not ready, what happens next? And the CO of the MAG said, if somebody's not ready, they lose. They go to the end of the line. And with that information, working with my officers and my staff NCOs, I was like, I know what to do. I can have everybody ready. I just need help, and I can get everybody home early. And everybody bought into it. And we got home a hell of a lot earlier than we were scheduled to. So definitely my proudest moment of Desert Storm.
Where did you guys fly back into?
We went 2 routes. Half the unit, because we didn't go as a unit, because as planes were there and people weren't ready, I'm like, I got to load, and I would shove people and stuff on a plane. And I had to take advantage of what planes were there, so that determined what I could send back. Like, to get the birds back, we could only put them on C5s. But all our general cargo or personnel, when they had a C-141 come in or a chartered passenger plane, I could fill it up with general cargo or people. And depending on which one you went on, it determined how you got back. So you either went over the Pacific and you air refueled all the way back to Hawaii, or you went the other route, which you stopped in either Spain or the UK, and then stopped in the East Coast of the United States, and then the West Coast, and then to Hawaii.
What about that story you told me about you guys taking a detour to Thailand? I'm joking. I'm sure your old lady's watching. She's like, what? What do you mean stopped in Thailand?
We did great things in Thailand on the float on the Belleau Wood, but it's probably not family-friendly content.
All right, man. Well, what was your reception like getting back from Desert Storm?
It was really cool for 2 reasons. One, I came back the route through Europe. So we stopped in Spain, and the families that were at the airbase there just came out and just took us into their homes while we had to wait, because there was a 24-hour wait for the planes to refuel, crew rest, and all that. So instead of just leaving us hanging out in the hangar, they would come by, they'd take us in their homes. They, fed us great meals and stuff, just treated us beyond anything that could have been expected. When we landed at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, I had been able to call ahead. A lot of family, including my mom, live in the Boston area, so they were there to greet me. So that was just super cool. And we stayed there a day, and then we flew out to March Air Force Base. And my captain, who we were the last 2 people because we were in charge of logistics, he had some friends stationed out there who came up from El Toro and picked us up at March Air Force Base for the night, took us out to a wonderful steak dinner, gave us a place to stay, and then they took us back to base. And then when we got to Hawaii, it was totally awesome because we got to Hawaii just as spring break started. So young Marines from the desert coming into spring break. Yes.
You guys got those awesome tan lines, on your face. That's it. Great to hit that beach.
And the Marine Corps, I will give them credit, where credit is due. You don't wear your utilities in public, but they were like, oh yeah, you can wear your chocolate chips out to Waikiki. Go for it.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. With permission. It was awesome. Very handy.
I will say, when we came back from our first deployment in Iraq, they had this big parade in Oceanside, California, for all the Camp Pendleton Marines that came back, and we wore our camis out in town. It was like, yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't know, like wearing utilities out in civilian public is like a big no-no. You don't do it. It's not an authorized uniform. So for us to wear our camis out in town, authorized for this big parade that they were having, was a big deal. And it doesn't feel right,
Oh, even today it doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah. 100%. So, and like Marines, like when you're walking through the airport as a Marine, or even as a Marine that formerly served, like you see these Army guys walking around in utility uniforms, you're like, like
yeah.
it just rubs you so wrong. So,
oh yeah. Yeah. So, there was only 2 times I ever wore my utilities in public. The time I just described, and the first time coming back as I escorted units over, I came back individually. And so it's mid-August. I've been in Saudi Arabia for 2 weeks. And by the way, I haven't taken a shower. So I'm sure on these plane rides, whoever sat next to me was just thrilled, and I remember they put me on a plane in Riyadh, and it stops in Athens, London. I change planes and I get to Philadelphia. And then I got a 24-hour layover. And I'm just stuck in the middle of Philadelphia airport in a set of utilities. It's the only time I've ever been in public. But luckily, a Navy lieutenant commander took some pity on me and bought me a nice dinner and showed me where the USO was. And I could actually get to be a shower and smell like almost a human being, although I had to put that nasty uniform back on for the rest of the trip to Hawaii.
That's too funny. So what was your first assignment coming back from Desert Storm?
HMH 463, I stayed with the unit, and we were kind of in a weird cycle. We came back, the base was overcrowded, and for 2 reasons. One, all the detachments that had ever been assigned to the base were there at one time. And as you know, Brent, units are always deployed, so not everybody's always there. So we came back and we went into a really kind of slow maintenance cycle. There were no big exercises scheduled, of course, because the war had been on and everything had been canceled. So it was just a lot of local training, and I ended up ETSing. We got back to K-Bay 1 April 1991, and I ETS'd 1 July. So the only thing that really came up in that time frame is we called it Operation Just in Case, because the thing came up was there might be another coup in the Philippines we might have to go to. So we kind of did a embarkation drill of packing up the equipment to get ready for that, but it was half-hearted at best.
So you have a very interesting story, and it's part of the reason why I started doing these interviews of warfighters, because I really wanted to highlight not just the individual infantrymen and Marine and soldier, but I wanted to also show people that these individuals, after they leave the Marine Corps or the Army for that matter, like they go on and do big things. And a lot of times it's similar to what they did in the military. And you were like, in my opinion, the epitome of that, right? Because here you are, you did embarkation stuff. Hell, even you can even tie in like the photography stuff. And that kind of segues into what you end up doing later on in life, which, I'm sure we'll get to. But what happened after you left active duty Marine Corps? Because your service didn't end there.
No, it didn't.
It ends up picking up again. So let's get into it.
So I moved into the Marine Reserves, but I also went to college for a year. And in college, there was no Marine Reserve units around, so nobody kind of worried about me. And I dipped my toe in of Army ROTC, and basically pretty quickly found out that college wasn't for me. Looking back on it all these years later, I picked the wrong college is what I did. But it wasn't for me. And the ROTC people were very adamant to all the people coming in, especially prior service guys, that look, the drawdown's here now. The Cold War's over. Units are being decommissioned. It's like, any of you guys want to be in aviation? It's not going to happen, which sucked. I did. I wanted to be the guy flying the bird instead of the guy riding in the back. And that only the luckiest of you will get active duty. And I'm like, don't like college, and I can't achieve what I came to do. Fuck it, I'm out of here. And then I became a fisherman of all things for a year. And then one day, just decided I didn't want to be on the boat anymore. Had enough of it. And I said, what do I want to do with my life? And I was like, well, I do have this skill. I do know logistics and all that. And I went to Dulles Airport, figuring somebody needs somebody who's got my skills. I was right. I literally walked down the cargo lanes till the first guy that hired me. And then that started my career in logistics on the civilian side. Over the years, that reached the point where I eventually, with my business partners, formed my own company that we now have 6 offices across the United States and employ about 80 people.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I guess I literally, what the recruiting paster says, go in and get a skill.
Right. So after the Marine Corps Reserves, though, I know you did some time in the dark side. So
yeah,
bring that into the fold.
At the time in the early 90s there, the Marine Corps, like every branch of the military, was drawing down, and there weren't that many reserve units to go to. The closest one to me was the 4th Light Armored Infantry down here at Quantico, and they were ridiculously over TO in people. So I didn't go to drills traditionally. They offered me this thing called exercise support. And the first year in the unit, I went and did 45 days out of 29 stumps supporting CAX exercises, basically. Basically, I was a colonel's driver. And I ended up doing all my required days for the year at one time in one block. The next year, I did the same thing, except I was on the USS Saipan supporting an exercise up in Norway. And then the third year, this opportunity came up where one of my really good friends from high school was an officer over in a National Guard unit. He was short team leaders and squad leaders, and my unit was over TO, and the Marine Corps was basically anything you did that if you wanted to go somewhere or get out, they were willing to let you do it. So I said I wanted to lat move over to the Guard, and I joined the dark side, much to my regret.
I got with before we leave talking about the Marine Corps, what is this picture from?
Yeah. So there's a great story that goes with this picture. This is in December of 1987. And I had mentioned when I went to my school, they were over things. So I was sent over to Amphibious Reconnaissance School. And this was a picture snapped of me by the public affairs team. Is we were defending a beach over at Fort Story on the Chesapeake Bay while they were teaching the 82nd Airborne how to do, of all things, amphibious assaults. So we were the OP4. And right before this picture was taken, we had a defensive position, and the guy in front of me, I'm the guy in back, had saw that we were about to get outflanked, and we just jumped up and ran. And we got over there, and the two of us just slaughtered them all. It was great. The best part of it was that this Army captain was all pissed off, yelling about something about not following doctrine and everything. And our gunny just went, "Shut the fuck up, Captain. You got your ass owned." It was so fucking awesome being a young PFC and being able to pull that off.
If you ever served in the U.S. military or any military for that matter, or you have aspirations to join the military, I can tell you with 100% confidence that being OP4 is always more fun.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always more fun. So any opportunity you get to be OP4, take it.
Absolutely.
All right. So I definitely have a picture. Oh, there it is. Yep. So from your time in the Guard, it looks like, were you doing infantry in the Guard?
Yeah, I was what they call 11 Bravo. The Virginia National Guard is a light infantry unit. Very storied unit. 29th Division was one of the divisions that went ashore on D-Day. And also in the First World War, they fought alongside the Marines at Belleau Wood. Super storied unit. Can trace its lineage all the way back to Jamestown. So one of the oldest units in the U.S. military. And I was in an infantry unit. And for 3 years, we were considered part of the 18th Airborne Corps. So we had all the same training objectives as the 82nd, the 101st, 10th Mountain. And it was a complete disaster because those units on active duty have more time off than we had allotted training days. So the fact that we never quite performed at their level shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but it always seemed to be a surprise to our officers. But there was some good parts to it too. Not many, but there were a few good ones. That particular picture, we were at Fort Pickett doing an exercise, and we were tasked to be Op 4 again, and we were Op 4ing against SEAL Team 2. And we made them work for it. Yes, we died in a grotesque and military manner, but they paid a heavy price to overrun that position. I'll just leave it at that.
How much time did you spend? Well, actually, let me just say that you picked up sergeant in the IRR, the individual ready reserve, and you didn't find this out until you joined the National Guard, right? Isn't that what you were telling me before we started the screen?
Oh yeah, it was so funny. So like the first day I'm checking into my unit and everything, and they don't know who I am. Matter of fact, when it was a mobilization drill, so they're checking everybody's record. So it was maybe the perfect day for this to happen. I walk up and they're like, "Why aren't you in uniform?" "Oh, I'm new to the unit." "Oh, okay. Do you have any ID?" And I lay down a Marine Corps ID, and they were like, "Oh crap." And they start asking me all these questions, fill all this stuff out, and go through all the different stations. Well, the next morning at drill, this comes like, "Sergeant Winner, report to something." Who the fuck? What? I go report to the person they tell me to report to, and they're like, "Here's a check." And I'm like, "Why? What am I getting a check for?" Thinking, "Oh my God, they're going to want this money back at some point." And no, the person explains to me that back in 1991, I had been promoted to sergeant, and that was my back pay I was due.
So was it just an oversight while you were still on active duty, or did you actually pick up in the IRR?
It was an oversight from active duty.
Oh, wow.
With the help of the kind sergeant that was from brigade headquarters that informed me of this, I actually got my promotion warrant, and I actually been meritoriously promoted to sergeant. I had no idea.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You hear about guys getting promoted in the IRR, and if you guys are watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, the individual ready reserve, when you sign that initial contract to go in, you sign for 8 years essentially. So you do 4 years on active duty, and then you do 4 years in the IRR. And what the IRR is, it's just you're out of active duty. However, if they need you, they're going to call your ass back. Well, that time that you spend in the IRR, you can still get promoted. And a lot of guys do. They end up getting like a warrant mailed to them saying like, "Hey, congratulations, you've been promoted in the IRR." So this is when Les told me this story. I was like, "Oh, he must have got promoted in the IRR." But that's funny that there was some, promotion oversight while you were still on active duty. And then you don't even find out about it until you join the National Guard. And had you not gone to the National Guard, you would have never even known you got promoted.
Never known. Because you have to, back then there was no such thing as Marine Online or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps can do a lot of things. Administrate itself is not one of the things it can do. It sucks at it. That's one thing where I will give the National Guard credit. The unit I was in, nobody, and I mean nobody, had a pay problem. The guys who needed to get to schools got to schools and stuff. Not like the Marine Corps.
So how long did you spend in the National Guard?
3 years too long.
3 years. Did you guys ever get mobilized or anything like that?
We got called up one time for natural relief operation. The Rappahannock River had completely overflowed, so we got called out to help people. And another time we got called up during the fighting over in the Balkans, and we went to Germany to replace the units there at Hohenfels training area as dedicated Op 4, which was some of the worst and shittiest duty ever. Because I'll be honest, I'll name names. The 1st to the 4th, the unit that was there, that was the cadre unit to be the Op 4, they sucked. They had no field craft. They have no leadership skills. And it just made for a miserable fucking time on what should have been some really excellent training. And to give you an idea why I'm so just still upset about it, we're getting an initial brief. We're told the unit that was there has been deployed down to Croatia, and we're backfilling them. And that since we're no-goes, that's what they refer to National Guardsmen, you're nothing more than slave labor. Get used to it. And they were so assholes about it. We were not even allowed to go in the chow hall. That for an entire month, we ate in our barracks out of mermites. I mean, that's how fucking fucked up the Army is. Because I know in the Marine Corps I was in, Brent, you can correct me if I'm wrong, no active duty Marines would have treated their reservist brothers like that ever.
No, I mean, I will admit, like, I remember being on active duty in Iraq and stuff, and like, if there was reservists on the, like, you kind of did look at them.
Shit, that's one thing, but
you kind of look at them, cockeyed, but they were still Marines, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the National Guard to the active duty is second-class citizens in all the horrible ways.
It's crazy because there's a lot of Marines that I know. Once they leave active duty, they end up going into the National Guard, right? They get out, and then for whatever reason, it's like the Marine Corps is like, maybe they're just a little bit too heavy and they can't do that 3-mile, PFT run or get those, Marine Corps pull-ups anymore. And the National Guard is very appealing because they're over there with like, hey, bonuses, left and right, and all this other crap. And a lot of guys I know, after serving in the Marine Corps, go into the National Guard and end up serving honorably there. And they spend a lot of time. So I know several guys that did that.
Yeah, it is interesting because like when I showed up at the unit, they're like, "Oh, you're Prize Service Marine." I'm the first day at the unit. They don't know me. They don't know anything about me. You're on the rifle team. Marine. So obviously, it's just assumed I shoot better than everybody else.
Oh, you're a Marine. You're a freaking expert marksman.
Oh yeah. Although with the crap we had for weapons, it didn't matter how good you were. Hitting anything was strictly luck.
What year was this?
1994.
Did they have A2s or were they still using A1s?
Ooh, we had A1s. Only my last year in the Guard did we get A2s, and we called them the Barney rifles because they were nothing more than converted A1s. Matter of fact, didn't say burst; it still said auto. And whoever did the anodizing on them screwed it up. So like 3 months after we got them, they are bright purple like Barney the dinosaur.
So they just took an A1 lower, took out the auto sear, replaced it with a 3-round burst group, and then they threw an A2 upper on it. That's what they did?
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. We had original M60s, not Echo 3s. And they were worn out. You couldn't get the things to run reliably. We had 203s. That was about the only thing that was modern. Matter of fact, the National Guard unit has state defense duties for like riot control or civil unrest. And we were assigned an old 1897 shotgun as part of riot control, like one of the trench guns from World War I. We had that. We had an M21, and nobody ever fired the thing because they never had ammo. So they had that thing. I'm pretty sure the whole time that rifle was in that armory, no one fired it. The few night visions that we had were PVS 5s, PVS 4 scopes for the rifles. No PEX, nothing cool like that. Nothing Gen 3. The radios, funny story about the radio. I think you remember this when we told it at One Shepherd, Brent. We were having our big evaluation one summer camp, and we're taking a trench line. And we hit the trench, and we do take it from the company that was Op 4. And we're having the AAR afterwards. And this major from the 82nd who was evaluating us goes, it was pretty good. You carried the day, but you just didn't use your radios correctly. And if you'd done that, it would have went better. Everybody starts laughing. I mean, from the CO down to the lowest private. And majors tend to not like being laughed at. So he wanted to know what the fucking joke was. So we grab our ROTC cadet, spin him around, undo the battery box on the PRC 25, and there's no battery in it. And we're like, we have no batteries, and it wouldn't matter if we did. We only have one radio. There's no one to talk to. And then he asked, well, how'd you all do this? And we're like, wristwatches. And then he was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Time sync, baby. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, cool. So after you left, you decided to leave the Guard. What'd you go on to do then?
Well, I do like being an infantryman, and we've been out at One Shepherd. I like being out in the field and everything. And the reason I got out of the Guard, I should go into that first. It's 1997. And I come home from drill and I tell my wife, it's like, well, the jig's up. She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, the unit I was in Southern Virginia. It was 3 hours from the house. And I said, they found out there's an armory down the street from me and they want me in that unit. And that unit's going to deploy to Bosnia. She said, is there an alternative? I said, well, yeah, I shoot good enough. I got a slot. I can probably go to Scout Sniper School at Fort Benning at the same time. Wife's like, oh, so you're going to go away when your daughter's due to be born. And I'm like, time to get out. I can get out. Time to grow up. So at that point, I was working for a logistics company at the airport. And I was doing pretty well. I'd moved into a supervisor's position. A few years later, the company I'm working at is getting bought out, and the guys were all looking at there going, this ain't going to work out well. So we all, as a group, jumped ship to another company. And a few years after that, it's getting bought out. And we're like, this is really going to be bad. So the three of us that were there got together, linked up with two other guys that we knew ran another logistics business. And that's how we formed the partnership that I'm in today. And we started out working literally in a closet of another business that would lend us the space. And like I said, now we have 6 offices across the U.S. We employ about 80 people, and things are going pretty darn well.
That's awesome. And I know one of the things that you do is like you guys transport like weapon systems and stuff, right?
Yes, we do.
Sanctioned by the U.S. government to transport to certain countries, allied nations across the world. So you see like all kinds of cool stuff come through your warehouses.
Oh yeah, we see some really cool stuff sometimes. And we do a lot of stuff also with other governments as well, because one of the big things here in the Washington area is every October the Army has their Association of the U.S. Army show, where like everybody around the world shows all their cool shit, and we move a lot of that in. So yeah, we get to play with a lot of cool shit. And when I say play, we get to look at it. Sometimes we lift it up. Right. We don't get to do anything super cool with it, except and drool all over it.
What is this phase plasma rifle on a 40-watt range?
Actually, I'm about to ship something that might fit that thing, believe it or not. Look at everybody. There's a thing out there called the GR1 Anvil, and it is a coil gun.
Oh, wow.
And they are legal for civilian sale. Matter of fact, you don't even have to fill out a 4473 to get one.
Wow. Well, cool, man. So that pretty much wraps up your federal service and state service. But your service doesn't quite end there, because you got involved with an organization that we're both intimately familiar with, and
which is all your fault.
A little bit. I played a little bit of a role, but why don't you tell us how you got into that? And now, I don't want to spoil it, but you have a big role in the organization.
Yeah. So this guy off on the other picture here puts out a video about this thing called One Shepherd, and I'm like, wow, that looks really freaking awesome. And I think you were out here for one of your schools. We linked up, and you were like, yeah, this thing is really cool. It's the best thing going. It's like all the fun and none of the dumb. So like next semester, they fortuitously came to this area. They had been, One Shepherd had been Missouri based, and they opened up a West Virginia company. And the first semester they had there, Brent and I are there, and we had the pleasure of working together. And that was a blast. Had to shake a lot of rust off. Hadn't been in the field a while, but I think we had a really good time. And,
yeah, that was awesome. And just the serendipity of, Bravo Company starting up right there in West Virginia, right close to where you are, around the time that I link up with you and like convince you to join up with One Shepherd. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. And I got the bug. It all came back, all that fun stuff, because there's a lot of bad stuff that happens in the Marine Corps. We call it the suck for a reason in some respects, the games that are played in the barracks and all that. But generally, when you're out in the field, that's when you have your good memories, and that's where all the good sea stories come from. And one Shepherd, you get to do all the fun stuff of the military without any of the dumb shit. And the chow's good. The training's excellent. You know, a lot of the classes that you go to at One Shepherd exceed what you get in the military. And the people you meet are super motivated because they all want to be there. They're there by choice. They paid their money. They want to get this experience. And yeah, it's been great. And after that semester, I've hit every single One Shepherd had. And as you all know from watching Brent's live streams, Doc can be rather persuasive. And he talked me into becoming the CO of Bravo Company out here in West Virginia.
Yeah, but you did some time doing other stuff. I remember when you were like the armory custodian and like supply man, like you're handing out stuff. It's just like, oh, you have your own logistics company. Okay, well, let's make you the supply guy of One Shepherd Bravo Company.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is One Shepherd's completely volunteer based, so we always need more help. And you know, the good-natured people that run it and stuff makes it hard to say no when they ask for help. So yeah, I started helping out in the S4 and help, you know, because I had the experience doing it. So, you know, it was fun to do. It was fun to relive some old stuff. And you know, now as commander of Bravo Company, I've got people to be the S4 in Bravo, and they'll do an excellent job too. I have no doubts.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's all your fault. I wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for you.
Well, just to kind of fill in a little gap, the way I met Les is many years ago. I had a little competition on my YouTube channel. I had gotten a free scope from Primary Arms, and it was for a contest. And you know, I started thinking, I was like, you know, if I'm going to do a contest, like I'm not going to just do one of these like random pull giveaway things. Like I don't want to do that. I want somebody to work for it and earn it, right? You know, that's the Marine way. Like you earn stuff. You just don't give free handouts. So I came up with this idea that I was going to throw out a scenario, and my scenario is actually heavily based on like a recent One Shepherd semester that I went to. And I was like, laid out all this, gave like a little mini 5-paragraph order. And the contest was you had to put together your gear for this mission that I outlined in the order. And you had to do essentially a junk on the bunk inspection, and you had to go through and show all your gear for that mission. And then you also had to have certain room for the specialized equipment that I outlined in the mission as well, where you were going to carry that and like which camo pattern you were going to use and all your weapons and all that stuff. Right. Well, Les scored after I reviewed all the videos, and I watched every single one of them. Some of them are over an hour freaking long. Let me tell you, Les was like, I think 3rd place or something.
First runner up.
Second place?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
you won
Renaissance Marine beat me.
That's right. You won a UW Gear rig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
John
rig.
at UW Gear donated a rig for one of the prizes. So first prize was a scope. Second prize was a UW rig. And then I think Bruce and our friend Abner also donated some stuff. And we had a 3rd and 4th place. But anyways, yeah, so Les, did a great job with that, and I started talking to him, and then I had been selected for first sergeant, and had to go to a first sergeant's course down in Quantico. So I was down in Quantico, and I was like, hey man, let's link up, let's have some dinner, grab some beers. And we started talking, and I'm like, hey dude, you got to go to this organization called One Shepherd. Like a guy like you would absolutely love this. And the rest is here.
So. Yeah, that was a blast. That was a good meeting, man. A lot of good things came out of that.
Yeah, it was good. That was a good time, man. It's crazy how like little pathways can lead you down and alter your life. Like I met my wife at a bar that I went to only because the night prior I met a group of girls, and one of them was like, hey, are you going to this bar tomorrow night? And I didn't know what that bar was. And then, once my drunken self sobered up the next morning, I looked up that bar and I was like, oh, let's go check it out with my buddy. And we go there, and then I ended up meeting my wife. So, it's just crazy how little things have the capability of altering your life completely.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, our meeting through YouTube is probably the most productive thing that's ever happened on YouTube.
So, but we're going to go train together here shortly. We got a Bravo Company spring semester coming up. So I highly look forward to that.
This is going to be a good one. We are sold out.
Yeah.
All slots are filled. And the impressive thing was we did it in 3 days.
Wow.
So, yeah, 3 days, the semester was sold out. This is going to be a pretty unique one in the fact that it's a new STX that One Shepherd's teaching. So that's going to make for some awesome stuff. And, we're putting on a land navigation class. We're doing our basic warrior stuff. We're having a light leaders class. So this is going to be some really great stuff. We've spent all winter long working on all the equipment. So everything's in top-notch shape. So, everything's going to be running 100%. The rifles are ready to go. The night vision's ready to go. The miles is all ready to go. Radios have been maintained. It's going to be awesome.
That's awesome, man. I look forward to hitting you guys up and spending a good time with y'all, you and Doc and all the other guys. So, well, this has been a very interesting stream, Les. I'm glad you came on with us tonight. If any of you guys got any questions in the chat, I'm sure Les would be happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
His, career in the United States Marine Corps and U.S. Army National Guard.
Yeah, let's keep that to a minimum.
Well, I mean, it's to be quite frank, though, it's an important chapter because that's, you learn, infantry stuff, right? Like you went through Marine Corps combat training, obviously, after recruit training. And, then you go into the air wing, you serve in Desert Storm, then you come back and then you go into the Guard. And it's like, despite, serving as a, air crew on a bird, now you're a ground pounder in a National Guard, trigger puller. So just living up to that every Marine's a rifleman concept, essentially.
Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that, Brent, because in the Guard, that's when that phrase really hit home. Because here I am, technically, I'm not an infantryman when I go into an infantry unit, and my skill level was on par with everybody that was there. That's how seriously the Marine Corps took it. When General Gray said that, all the Pogue Marines essentially are going to take care of themselves, that the grunts got other things to do, things like our air group and the squadrons all of a sudden would get a gunny or a first sergeant sent over to them as a training NCO from the ground side, and those Marines did their work. And, those skills they taught us, they came through, and all that stuff we had to do under the battle skills, it was good knowledge, and we all had to know it, and the ground side had to know it. The air side know it. We had to pass the same tests. We have to go through the same rifle qual. So yeah, it's good preparation, and, it shows how good they did their job, because when I got to an infantry unit, I had no problem keeping up. The only problem I did have was Army terminology versus Marine terminology, because you tell everybody to go hit the head and everybody looks at you like you got 4 of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note the Marine Corps philosophy, and that saying, it's not just a saying. Like every Marine's a rifleman. Yeah, obviously, a non-infantry Marine goes through only 2 weeks of Marine combat training. However, we have a long precedent in our Marine Corps lifetime of examples of non-infantry Marines picking up rifles and manning up, filling in Marine rifle squads. Guadalcanal. You had freaking cooks filling in, replacing combat casualties. For the life of me, I can't, and I apologize, this is killing me, but there was a Marine aviator that was flying, his Wildcats up in the air, splashing zeros. And, once his plane was shot to shit and he couldn't fly no more, he became a platoon commander on the ground at Guadalcanal, fending off Japanese wave assaults on the ground. So, I mean, that's just the epitome of the phrase, every Marine's a rifleman. So,
absolutely. And all the pilots I served with, they'd all gone through OCS. They'd all gone through TBS. They'd gone through all the infantry schools. Being a pilot was then added on to the skills they already had.
So we got a few questions here. Les and Desert Storm, Desert Shield, how long did it take before your unit got the M9 magazines?
Quite quickly, actually, because we were part of a larger mag, and when we pointed out this problem up to mag headquarters, the other units that had them were told to give up a few, so we had enough to at least everybody had one. And then pretty quickly thereafter, resupply came in, and we got enough. Matter of fact, we had an abundance of them at that point.
So Thrill 8762, he's a constant viewer. He's been watching for a long time. He's a Marine. He says, when you joined the Guard, did they make you go through their version of School of Infantry?
Yeah, they had a thing called MOSQ was what they called it. And yes, I did have to go through it. And it was not as hard as what the Marine Corps put me through in ICT and boot camp.
All right, maybe you can answer this. What kinds of applications could you see for the GR1 Anvil currently, or perhaps improved versions in the future?
Right now, in its current form, training simulator. I could see it being useful in like an area where you can't fire off live ammunition, like say in an armory for just doing basic rifle qualifications, but that's it.
Les, what camera pattern do you wear?
Finish M05.
And you got a long history of going over to Finland and everything else. You've done a lot of work with that.
Yeah, I first went over there in 2019 to shoot a match called Finnish Brutality, and I've gone back every year since. The Finns are awesome. They're great people. They have a warrior tradition. Due to conscription, anybody you meet above the age of 18 that's male has been in the military, and I've met a surprising amount of women who have been as well. They know their neighbor to the east. We're seeing what they can do in Ukraine right now, and yeah, they prepare for that, and they take it very seriously.
This might be a bigger question than for us. It's really not pertaining to your career, but what did Les see other countries' armies do better than the U.S. That U.S. forces should adopt?
One thing I will give the British credit for, they have this thing called the brew up. It's where they cook a hot meal. And when they decide to brew up, nothing interferes with that. Here in the U.S. military, we're used to, you could never have a fire, you'll give our position away, yada, yada, yada. And you usually eat cold MREs. And just about the time you get your MRE open and you're all set, somebody's like, you got to go do this right now. Pack up, get down, move, move, move. That doesn't seem to happen in the British Army or the Royal Marines. And it's a really awesome thing. And I wish that's something the U.S. military would adopt.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff other militaries do that I wish we do, and I mean maybe that will be a live stream topic for the panel sometime. But there's a lot of stuff. There's by no means do we always do things the right way, right? There's, if you want to look at fighting in Arctic conditions, although we have some experience doing that, by no means are we the best in the world at doing it, right? So.
Yeah, if Arctic conditions, go to the Finns, go to the Norwegians. Yeah, they're really good at it.
Well, I think that's pretty much it. So, all right, Les. Well, it's been a good, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us your story. So,
I appreciate it.
In case you guys don't realize this, Les is a regular, and I mean regular. He's probably only missed maybe one or two of the standard live streams. Yeah, that was because you were downrange, like shooting in Finland, or no, you were actually on the Finland one.
Yeah, I was on the Finland one. No, there was one out in Desert Brutality out in Utah. The night you did the live stream, I was on the plane, and I thought that'd probably be a little weird just trying to do a Brent live stream in the middle of an airplane.
Oh man. So, but yeah, you guys can check him out every week. We do, or we try to do anyways, a live stream with a panel. Les is a constant regular on that. Les also has his own YouTube channel, Pegasus Tests. Make sure you go check him out on YouTube, and he's got great content. If you guys are fans of my channel, he does a lot of stuff that's very similar in different parts of the country. He does camouflage tests over there on the East Coast, right? Different terrain, different look. So he's done a lot of videos over some of the same patterns, but in a different environment. So if you're a big fan of the camouflage test, check that out. Les also does a lot of shooting videos, gear reviews. And not just like the latest and greatest stuff. He does reviews over freaking surplus items all the time, dating back to freaking the 70s.
Yeah. Hey guys, surplus, it worked back when they had it. And a lot of times when they went to something new, it wasn't because what they had didn't work. It's just somebody had a better government contract, really. And I have found a lot of the old stuff still stands up. I mean, we see it at One Shepherd all the time. Alice gear rocks.
Yeah, I mean, you just see it in the progression of gear, right? Just this big cycle, and we're already seeing, stuff kind of start circling back to battle belts and load bearing suspenders, and it's like this is you look at it, you take some of the molly away, some of the cool accoutrements, and you're looking at an Alice belt with Alice suspenders essentially.
Oh
So,
yeah. I mean, look at hydration systems. We went from canteens to camelbacks, and it seemed like there was this trend of just camelback getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now that's 1 liter size, just like your canteen. Huh.
yeah. Yeah, and then a lot of dudes don't even run camelbacks. They run like Naldream bottles, which is essentially a canteen.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Which I'm still a fan of, because I have not figured out an effective way to send a camelback out on a watering party yet.
yeah, I still use the shit out of canteens. So all right, guys. Well, we're gonna call it quits tonight. Again, appreciate everybody jumping on. It's been a great show. Les, do you have any final closing comments?
No, just thanks for having me on, Brent. This has been fun. It's fun to rehash all the sea stories. It's kind of the thing that you could go on forever and ever if you wanted to. But it's good to talk about this stuff. Thanks for everybody for tuning in.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, have a good night.